Closing remarks. The main story arc ends here. I originally intended to write until Naruto and his friends grew up, but after thinking it over, I realized there wouldn't be enough material to sustain that stretch. In the end, I decided to conclude the main arc after the battle with the Otsutsuki and handle the remaining material as side stories. That makes them both easier to write and easier to do well. First, I want to thank all the readers who have followed and subscribed. The book's early performance was poor enough that I almost quit. I remember that a novella I wrote in my third year of university, Night of the Nine-Tailed, even got to Sanjiang, yet this book, which I feel is a real step up in quality, didn't. I nearly convinced myself I'd lost my touch. Thankfully, with the support of my brothers, the book made a comeback. At its peak, it was only a few dozen average subscriptions away from 2 million, an uncommon achievement in fanfiction, and I'm satisfied with that. Still, I have regrets. This is the first book I've written that exceeds 3 million characters, more than my previous 2 works combined, and my inexperience with long-term serialization showed. 3 things stand out as problems: the Land of Rain Ninja Master plot, the battle with Uchiha Madara, and the parallel world Fourth Great Ninja War. The Land of Rain arc ran through the main story and was meant to play a crucial role, but it didn't have the impact I intended. There are many reasons, but 2 main issues come to mind: the protagonist's character design and my lack of experience writing in this area, which left the content hollow and without enough tension. I could write thousands more words on the latter, so I'll focus briefly on the character design. At the start, I conceived Mu Yue as a graduate who understood interpersonal relations better than most, with no great ambitions. Having transmigrated alone to another world, he would be fearful and lonely, a self-centered, emotionally withdrawn person. But I'm an author who likes happy endings. Could Mu Yue stay that way? Of course not. In my outline, Mu Yue initially interacts with his disciples for selfish reasons. He wants to farm rewards and gold to become stronger and protect himself. Over time, the disciples' sincere feelings move him, his mindset changes, and he genuinely wants to protect them. Mutual salvation, Mu Yue saving his disciples and the disciples healing his loneliness, is the theme I intended. It's a good idea in theory, but it was hard to execute. Early on, because Mu Yue acted mainly out of self-interest, many readers said he wasn't fit to be a teacher, too selfish, too dark. It was the first time my protagonist had been criticized like that, and I was bewildered. Coupled with the book's weak early performance, I tried to downplay the selfishness. That weakened the arc of his transformation, and the Land of Rain plot suffered. In my outline, Mu Yue's psychological change is crucial. After mutual salvation, he should stop seeing the ninja world merely as an outsider or a transmigrator, and instead feel its cruelty, recall his own training and the people he respected, and decide to change the world toward peace. One wrong step led to others, and that arc fell flat. For that reason, I've long wanted to write a side story about Mu Yue without a golden finger, to complete his character, to make him more than just a grandfather figure or an emotionless mission machine. The Madara fight wasn't as bad as the Rainmaster arc, but it still disappointed some readers. Madara was built up as the core boss of the main world over a long time, yet he died in only about 27,000 words. Many said it felt rushed. His death happened too easily, emotions weren't fully released, and the content could have been richer. Looking back, they were right. Part of the cause was my tendency to be influenced by comments. When most feedback pushed to kill the villain quickly, I subconsciously sped things up. That has pros and cons. It's good to know what readers want, but readers aren't professional authors, and bend in too easily to comments can lead to misjudgments. In the future, I hope to be an author who learns from feedback while still holding true to my own ideas. The parallel world Fourth Great Ninja War is, to me, as big a regret as the Land of Rain arc, maybe even bigger. Unlike the Land of Rain, which was meant to run through the main story, the parallel world was supposed to be pure fun. Fight bosses we hadn't fought yet, more operability, and greater spectacle. It started very well. Readers said it was more interesting than expected. But I wasn't in a good mental place at the time, and my pre-written outline hadn't been checked thoroughly. A major problem I hadn't anticipated surfaced, and that led to a strong start but a weak finish. The core issue in the parallel world is a conflict between what the plot needs and the protagonist's strength. If the protagonist had arrived there with Obito and the others from the start, then Six Paths Obito and Six Paths Madara would have been trivialized. They would be dealt with in a few moves. But the point of that arc was to fight bosses that didn't exist in the main world, Otsutsuki Kaguya, Six Paths Madara, and the like. So in my outline, the protagonist had to appear only at the very end, otherwise the outline would collapse. By the time I realized this wasn't working, the parallel world was almost 1/3 complete, so I couldn't make major revisions. I just had to grit my teeth and continue. During that period, I dreaded opening chapter comments the next day. It took me 20 minutes to build up the courage every time. My psychological resilience was low. I wanted to uninstall Chidian and the writer's assistant. But I couldn't ignore the feedback. There were problems, and writing blindly would have made them worse. After finishing the parallel world, I thought a lot about how to write a better, more enjoyable fourth Great Ninja War. I concluded that maybe I shouldn't have focused on Six Paths level battles. Those fights are so intense, the characters barely get to interact. But a war also needs character interaction, not just non-stop fighting with no room for emotion. If I did it again, I'd emphasize the interactions between characters, like the two Obitos and the older and younger Kakashi. As for the bosses, if we don't get rich fights with them, so be it. Sacrificing story for the sake of boss battles isn't worthwhile. Although the main story arc is complete, the book isn't finished. I will write side stories, some that supplement the main plot, and some independent ones. Here's a rough list of what I'm planning. Side stories. 1. Mu Yue in an if timeline without a system. This time Mu Yue has no cheat. Will he still meet Obito and the others, and what will he do? 2. Obito transmigrates to the original world. Obito wakes up alone in a parallel world. There's no Mu Yue sage here? Fine, I'll be the Mu Yue sage. 3. Mu Yue's if timeline, where he dies by a scheme. For unknown reasons, Mu Yue dies during the battle with Uchiha Madara, and Rin Nohara is taken by Madara. The disciples' ideals diverge, and they go their separate ways. Some insist on reviving Mu Yue at all costs to return to the old days. Others believe they must inherit Mu Yue's will and continue his hopes. This timeline will not return to the original. 4. Supplemental side stories for the main plot. These will be numerous and varied. The future lives of the protagonist's group, stories about Naruto and Sasuke and the next generation as they grow up, and many of the side stories I mentioned before. If you have ideas for interesting side stories you'd like to see, leave a comment and I'll consider them. Thank you again to everyone who has read and supported this book. Your company made this long journey possible. Why do I feel so dizzy? Sunlight pricked at his eyelids and a strange tingling ran down Obito's back. He squinted and pushed himself up from the grass. The roots snapped softly beneath his hands. The scent of cut grass flooded his nose. What the hell? Wasn't I sleeping at home? He blinked at the wide-open surroundings, bewildered. He didn't sleepwalk. This was far too far from home. He couldn't even see the village from here. Shrugging it off, he decided food came first. He rubbed his stomach and stood, brushing dirt and grass off his clothes. This place turned out to be a small park he'd never seen. As he walked toward the exit, he passed a set of swings. 4 children clustered there, 6 or 7 years old by the look of them. One of them had startlingly golden hair and was posing on a swing. "Ha-ha, I, Uzumaki Naruto, am the king of pranks. Who wants to learn pranking from me? Beg me, and I'll reluctantly teach you." Naruto puffed his chest out. One child snorted. "Who'd want to learn that? You'll only get scolded." A taller, thinner child looked at the sky. "Come on, if we don't get home soon, our families will worry." The others nodded and left, chatting and laughing. Naruto hollered after them, "You'll regret passing up Naruto's skills." They didn't look back. He watched them go, face falling, and slumped onto the swing. Another failure. Recognition was so hard to earn. "Are you Uzumaki Naruto?" Eh! Naruto nearly fell off the swing when Obito's voice reached him. He steadied himself thanks to Obito's quick catch. "I must be famous already. It won't be long before everyone knows me." Naruto inspected Obito like he'd seen a stranger and smiled proudly. Obito stared back, thinking fast. Unless he'd slept for years and Minato and Kushina had split up, turning Naruto into someone else, this had to be a parallel world. He tried to keep his shock under control. "Who are you? Why are you spacing out?" Naruto asked, noticing Obito zoning out. "Do you know Hayate Mugetsu?" Obito's question came out before he could stop it. If Mugetsu existed in this world, even an alternate version, he might be able to help Obito get back. "Hayate Mugetsu? Who's that? Is he famous?" Naruto blinked. He didn't know the name. Obito's heart dropped. No Mugetsu in this world? He forced himself to breathe. Maybe Mugetsu here was just obscure, and Naruto was too young to have heard of him. "So late. Aren't you headed home?" Obito probed. "It's always the same. No one's waiting for me anyway," Naruto said offhandedly. The words hit Obito like a blow. An Uzumaki without family, just like the other world's Naruto. No, don't let it be Obito's doing again. He swallowed and a different possibility sparked through him. Maybe this was the past of parallel world number 1. If it was, he'd only need to wait about 10 years until Mugetsu and the others showed up. Then he could ask them to send him back. "Big brother, why are you spacing out again? You're such a dork," Naruto complained when Obito fell silent again. "I was going to say, I like your look, so I'll treat you to Ichiraku ramen." "Ichiraku ramen." Obito's face lit up. Naruto hesitated, then brightened. "Haha, let's go. Time for ramen." Obito ruffled Naruto's small head. Treating him wasn't a question. If this was that other Naruto, he'd buy 100 bowls. They walked to Ichiraku and sat. Obito called out to the owner, "2 large bowls of tonkatsu miso chashu ramen." Tochi worked quickly. The bowls were placed before them, steaming and fragrant. Naruto's eyes gleamed. He dug in with abandon. Seeing the kid eat so eagerly made Obito smile, and he ate too. "Are you full? If not, I'll order you more," Obito offered when Naruto slowed. "No, I'm full. Thanks, big brother," Naruto said, beaming. Tochi came over with the bill. "That'll be 150 ryo." Obito reached into his pocket. His face changed. He had no money. Before the transmigration, he'd been cramming for the Hokage exams at home in loose clothes with empty pockets. He'd even fallen asleep without changing. He hadn't brought anything. "Customer-san, you didn't forget your money, did you?" Tochi asked with a smile as he put a hand on Obito's shoulder. Naruto instinctively scooted away. The smile looked scary to a child. Obito, however, stayed calm. "Yep, no money," he said. "Why are you so confident when you've got no money?" Naruto asked. "Because I wash dishes very fast," Obito replied without missing a beat. With his conditioning, doing the amount of washing for 150 ryo would be nothing. With just a few clones, he joked to himself, 1,500 ryo would be easy. Tochi looked at Obito for a long second, then chuckled. He decided it was a first-time mistake and that Obito didn't seem like a scoundrel. "Pay next time, all right?" he said, waving it off. Outside, Naruto walked beside Obito. "Why'd you invite me when you had no money?" "I was in too much of a hurry," Obito said, scratching his head. He really had been in a hurry, more than Naruto could imagine. "You're too careless," Naruto said, scolding him like a little brother. "By the way, big brother, what's your name? I still don't know." "Call Kakashi a dummy." Obito said it with a smirk. "Dummy, big brother," Naruto repeated jubilantly. "Darn it, that's not how you say it. Use the full name," Obito laughed. "You clearly want me to insult someone. Who'd fall for that so easily?" Naruto teased back. They walked and joked for half an hour. When they reached a fork in the road, Obito prepared to leave. Naruto's face fell. There weren't many people who treated him kindly or without odd looks. He wanted to stay with Obito longer, but he knew Obito had a home to return to. "So, big brother, what's your name?" Naruto asked one more time. "I'll tell you next time we meet," Obito said, waving as he started to walk away. "If you don't want to say, fine. I don't even want to know." Naruto pouted, then quickly brightened. "When I have money, I'll treat this dummy big brother to ramen." He skipped home. Obito walked a few blocks, as if to leave in plain sight, then ducked into an alley and used a transformation technique to mask his exit. He confirmed Naruto's identity in the park, then used Kenbun-shoku haki to probe the area. 2 chakra signatures hid in the shadows, likely Anbu watching the Jinchuriki child. "I didn't use a forehead protector or any jutsu. They shouldn't have noticed anything," Obito muttered, but he didn't worry. A couple of Anbu weren't a problem. He began to gather information on the Uchiha clan. If this was the past of the other world, the Uchiha annihilation should still be in the future, if the timeline matched. His knowledge of Parallel World Number 1 came from Six Paths Obito's memories and Naruto's retelling. In that memory, the Uchiha were wiped out when Sasuke was around 7 after plotting a coup. Obito hadn't seen Sasuke here yet, but he had met Naruto. Naruto and Sasuke were born the same year, Sasuke only about 2 months older. If Obito's reckoning was right, the Uchiha should be either on the brink of that night or already gone. The Uchiha compound looked peaceful. Obito let out a small, guarded breath. The night of annihilation hadn't happened yet. He still had room to act. If he changed history, though, would Mugetsu and the others still get transmigrated to Parallel World Number 1? They'd come because Naruto in that world encountered the Dragon Vein and ended up seeking help. If Obito altered events so that the Fourth Shinobi World War never occurred, Naruto might never touch the Dragon Vein. Then Mugetsu might never be called into that world. Maybe I should just hide in a corner for 10 years, he thought. But if I do nothing, what happens to this world's Naruto, Sasuke, Nagato, and everyone else? The contradiction gnawed at him. For now, he had to be practical. There was too little information to decide anything. Whether this world had Mugetsu, and whether it truly was the past of Parallel World Number 1, remained uncertain. He'd gather facts first and try not to ruin what might still be salvageable. 823. Obito. I want to be the second Mu Yue sage. After confirming the Uchiha clan still existed, Obito's next priority was to find out whether they were planning a coup. It wasn't hard. The Uchiha didn't hide anything. They discussed it openly in clan meetings. If they were truly planning a coup, every shinobi in the clan would know. If even one loose-lipped member spoke, the secret would leak. And even if they all kept perfect silence, the sheer number of people in the know would make it easy for the Anbu to dig it up. This Uchiha clan had been rebuilt after the Nine Tails incident, so Obito wasn't very familiar with their houses. He slipped into one at random. The girl he found inside looked oddly familiar. The tear-shaped mole under her eye snapped something into place. Izumi? He thought. Why is she living with the Uchiha? As far as he remembered, Izumi's mother was Uchiha, but her father wasn't. She had taken her father's name and lived in his household. Obito knew her because of Itachi. She and Itachi had been close. He decided to ask questions. He activated his Mangekyo Sharingan and cast a Genjutsu, forcing Uchiha Izumi to answer. The Izumi he remembered from his world would never tell the truth willingly, so he had no choice but to make her. "Do you know Hayate Mugetsu?" he asked. "No," Izumi replied, dazed. Obito breathed and continued. "Is the Uchiha planning a coup?" "Yes, the clan plans to stage a coup in 9 days. 9 days. Obito frowned. If his timing were any different, he'd be arriving to haunted houses. If memory served, Konoha usually struck the day before the Uchiha planned to move. That meant the clan would be wiped out in 8 days. If this parallels the world I know, he thought, then Shisui should already be dead. He asked one last question, unwilling to let it go. Is Uchiha Shisui still alive? She committed suicide, although there's talk in the clan that Itachi killed Shisui and faked his suicide. Obito's heart tightened. "Do you know Uchiha Obito?" he asked finally. "I've heard of him. He supposedly died in the war." He released the Genjutsu and left the house. He walked to the memorial stone for fallen ninja and read the names. Naruto, an orphan carrying the Uzumaki name, Uchiha Obito listed among the war dead, and the Uchiha themselves planning a coup. Everything here echoed the parallel world he'd come from. He could spend months collecting every scrap of information to prove it was the same world, but by then, the Uchiha graves would be overgrown. There was only one choice. This world had no Mu Yue sage. He would become the Mu Yue sage of this world. Obito lifted his hand and erased the large carved letters Uchiha Obito from the memorial stone. He laughed, a bright, almost relieved sound. Verifying the world's consistency completely was impossible in time. He couldn't sit back and wait for the chance to return. If he'd intended to do nothing, he wouldn't be Uchiha Obito, and he would have failed Mu Yue's teachings. "Who are you? What are you doing?" someone shouted. Kakashi, who had been coming to pay his respects, saw the scene and exploded with anger. He strode up to the stone. Having visited often to mourn his friend, he knew it by heart and immediately recognized the missing name. Fury flared in him, not only because Obito had been his best friend, but because Obito had been a hero who sacrificed himself for Konoha. Without a question, Kakashi threw a punch. To his shock, the man holding the stone caught Kakashi's fists solidly, without even looking at him. Could he be a spy from a hostile village? 100 suspicions flickered through Kakashi's mind, only to be overturned the next moment. The man slowly turned his head, wearing a wounded expression. How heartbreaking. The first thing after a long-awaited reunion is a punch, he said softly. Obito? Kakashi choked on the name. The air thickened. He groped for the truth with the weight of disbelief. Who are you? Obito is dead. Kakashi, an elite shinobi who had seen countless battles, pulled back and produced a kunai from his pouch, aiming it at the imposter. He knew how Obito had supposedly died, crushed under a boulder in the cave while saving him, and he had the scars to prove that memory. He moved his forehead protector aside, bearing his Sharingan, and stared at the man. Even with his 3 Tomoe Sharingan, he couldn't find any flaw in the disguise technique. Still, he didn't believe this nonsense. Don't talk nonsense. Aren't I fine? The man said, smiling calmly. Obito, because there was no better name, seemed unnaturally composed. You say I was crushed to death by a rock? He didn't intend to fight. He began to explain. I pushed you away that day and was hit by the falling boulders. I thought I'd die too, but something strange happened. When I woke up, I wasn't in the cave. I was in a strange ruin. He couldn't tell Kakashi the truth of the parallel world without landing in prison. He invented a different survival tale, waking in ancient ruins and recovering his strength. Kakashi snorted derisively. So you turned misfortune into a blessing. You didn't die, you found the 6-Path Sage's ruins, fully recovered, and got much stronger? Kakashi mocked, tightening his grip on the kunai. The 6-Path Sage sounded like some shabby joke to him. Obito scratched his head, as if dealing with a soldier who wouldn't understand a scholar. When we first started school at 5, in clone technique class, you, always showing off, used the shadow clone on the first exam. As Obito rattled off small, intimate details from their youth, details a spy couldn't possibly have known, Kakashi's cold expression cracked. The more Obito spoke, the more the impossible memories crowded in. The collapsing cave, the foolish, bloodied smile that had promised a gift. The kunai slipped from Kakashi's fingers with a clatter. He hadn't even noticed he'd lost his grip. Careless kunai handling can be dangerous, Obito said, stooping to pick it up and hand it back. Kakashi hesitated, staring into the familiar dark eyes. The man didn't dodge. He met Kakashi's gaze and chuckled, placing a hand on his shoulder. It's been a long time, Kakashi. It has been a long time, Obito. Kakashi took the kunai and let out a long, complicated breath. Though much of Obito's story sounded implausible, Kakashi was certain of one thing. This man was the Obito he remembered. Kakashi, without me as a teammate, you're not doing so well. Lolling about like this for so long, you'll become one of those useless old men, Obito teased. If they'd gone back 9 years, Kakashi would have listed every accomplishment to prove himself superior, and then mercilessly mocked Obito. Now he only lowered his head and looked at his right hand, the one calloused from endless training. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't protect Rin. Rin is dead. Kakashi was full of self-reproach, hardly daring to meet Obito's eyes. He still couldn't forget that rainy, bloody night, Rin's death, killed by his Chidori. The memory clawed at him constantly. Obito let out a long sigh. Hearing it, Kakashi bowed his head even lower, afraid that if he looked up, he'd find the friend he missed most staring back with anger and disappointment. Kakashi wasn't afraid of death. Compared to what he'd already lost, death meant little. He didn't care about gossip either. Even the rumors in the Anbu and through the village that he'd killed a comrade for a mission hadn't mattered that much. What he couldn't bear was the thought of the one who'd saved him, whom he had admired, looking at him with disappointment. The very idea was enough to make him reel. Kakashi. Obito's voice was soft. He slipped a hand under Kakashi's chin and lifted his face so they had to meet. When Kakashi finally saw him clearly, shock filled his chest. Obito's expression was complicated, sad and melancholy, but there was no anger, no condemnation. You don't need to apologize, Obito said firmly. It wasn't your fault. He explained. Rin had been taken by hidden mist operatives, and the mastermind behind it was probably Madara Uchiha. What could a young jonin like Kakashi, barely promoted, have done against them? Kakashi could barely save his own life that night. If Obito hadn't shown up when he did, Kakashi would have died at the hands of the Mist Ambu. Obito believed that even the Obito who'd turned into a scoundrel wouldn't blame Kakashi. Otherwise, he would have taken back the Sharingan long ago. "Even though I wasn't there, Kakashi, I know you did your best," Obito said. "The Kakashi I know is a shinobi who values his comrades above everything." Kakashi's vision blurred. He felt wetness trail down his cheek, tears, not rain. The sky had cleared. In that moment, even the crimson-tinted nightmare of that moonlit, rainy night seemed to fade. It was as if a sun rose in his chest, burning away some of the worst memories. Tears streamed down his face, but he couldn't help smiling. If the Kakashi from Mu Yue's world had made that face, laughing and crying all at once, Obito might have snapped a photo, but he didn't. There was nothing about that thought that could save the Kakashi in front of him. This Kakashi had suffered so much. A father who died by his own hand when he was young, friends who died saving him, or in one case at his hand. Who could shoulder that without breaking? "You don't think I'll let you off so easily just because you say nice things," Kakashi said abruptly, wiping his tears and turning away. "This time you were gone longer than ever before." Obito scratched his head. "Yeah, I know. I still can't exactly approve of it. The thought of the other Obito, of the one who would later take part in the Uchiha massacre, made his fists clench. Even if that Obito had been manipulated by Madara, the memory of what he'd done made him furious. If they ever met, Obito decided, he would give that version of himself a good beating just to vent. "Kakashi, you need to seriously tell me what happened during those years you were missing," Kakashi said, composing himself. "You can tell me, but the higher-ups won't be that easy. They'll want to verify things." Obito had been gone for 9 years. When he disappeared, he had been only 12. No reasonable explanation seemed to fit such a long absence. If someone had been injured and stranded, 9 years was too long. The fact that Obito now moved without visible impairment made the suspicion he might be a spy even stronger. Having been away so long, it was hard to tell if he still belonged to Konoha or if some other village had turned him. "But everything I said is true," Obito said, playing the part of him putting on a naive shrug. If he was going to impersonate Obito, he knew he couldn't offer a tidy explanation. The gap was too wide. So why not make it absurd? 2 eyes now? 6-path sage's power. 9 years away? 6-path sage's power. Stronger than most? 6-path sage's power. If they didn't believe him, what could they do? Even if all the jonin in Konoha came at him, Obito felt sure he could handle them. He didn't actually possess some mythical all-powerful gift, but he had Mu Yue's teachings and the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, enough to overwhelm anyone below the 6 paths level. Even if Madara returned, Obito felt confident he could deal with him. He met Kakashi's eyes without hesitation. "Okay, how about this? I'll take this eye back." Kakashi touched the left eye he'd been given. The Sharingan everyone knew came from a friend's gift. Removing it would at least remove suspicion. "There's no reason to take back a gift," Obito said, grabbing Kakashi's arm to stop him. "Kakashi, trust me, it'll be fine." "Keeping my word is my way as a shinobi," Kakashi replied. "I'm a man who wants to be Hokage. How could I walk back on something small like this?" A night breeze picked up, ruffling Obito's dark hair. Looking at his confident face, Kakashi's memories drifted back toward the past, and he couldn't help blurting, "No one will vote for someone who's always late." "That's why I said it was unavoidable," Obito answered, deadpan. Kakashi laughed despite himself. "Since you insist, then I hope I don't see you in prison next time." Obito's grin was infectious. He'd come back without money, without a home. When he'd returned, he'd found his old house gone and someone else living there. "Konoha was badly damaged when the Nine-Tails rampaged," Kakashi explained. "The village was destroyed and rebuilt. Districts were reorganized. Minato-sensei and Kushina-sensei died in the attack." Kakashi's eyes dimmed. He had joined the Anbu because of Minato Namikaze. Not long after, both Minato and Kushina were gone. "It'll get better," Obito said, recalling the lonely blonde figure he'd seen when he first transmigrated. He let out a long sigh. You really deserve 1,000 deaths, he muttered, half to himself. Kakashi cleared his throat and took Obito back to his home. He lived alone, but kept it tidy. There was room enough. Once inside, Obito's curiosity got the better of him. He wandered around, finally spotting a book left on the dining table. He picked it up, read the title, and reached to turn a page. In a flash, Kakashi lunged forward, snatched the book away, and shoved it behind his back. "Don't rummage through other people's things," he scolded, faking righteous indignation. "Heh, I was just curious about what kind of novels you read," Obito teased. "It's not a novel," Kakashi said solemnly. "Those are Konoha's secret documents, disguised as a novel. I'm in the Anbu now." Watching Kakashi scramble for excuses, Obito smirked and nodded like he understood, though if he hadn't already known what that book was, he might have been fooled. The young Kakashi was still entertaining in his awkwardness. "If the third Hokage believes you, they might build you a new house inside the Uchiha compound," Kakashi added, explaining the post-Nine Tails housing policy. Uchiha were supposed to live within the clan's designated grounds. They had a meeting 2 days ago about a possible coup, and now you return. It's suspicious timing. Obito thought of Koizumi's absence from her home and her living inside the Uchiha compound. It was likely her father had died in the Nine Tails attack, and she'd moved back. "Damn, Obito," he thought. "What are you planning to do? Continue as a shinobi?" Kakashi asked. "Of course. Didn't I say I want to become Hokage and end the wars?" Obito said with a bright smile. Of course, he'd continue as a shinobi. How else could he try to prevent the tragedies he knew were coming? That was part of why he'd assumed Obito's identity. Being strong and known as Obito would make things easier in Konoha. Kakashi opened his mouth to warn him about how hard it would be to regain trust after a 9-year disappearance, but he said nothing further. For now, he didn't want to dampen Obito's enthusiasm. The next morning, Kakashi rose early, made 2 breakfasts, then took the papers he'd prepared straight to the Hokage's office. He knocked and was admitted. "Come in," Hiruzen Sarutobi said. Kakashi entered and set the documents on the desk. "Obito has returned," he announced. Hiruzen's face turned pensive. "Obito, the one who gave you the Sharingan? Didn't he sacrifice himself in the mission?" "He didn't die," Kakashi replied. "The sacrifice was a mistake. He survived, but he was held by forces beyond his control and only just returned. The details are in these documents." Hiruzen took the pages and began to read. After several minutes, the corners of his mouth twitched, and he set the papers down, taking a long draw on his pipe and exhaling a plume of white smoke. "Kakashi, are you sure you didn't grab the wrong papers?" he said, half joking. Waking up early might make anyone groggy. A tale about the six-path sage sounded like nonsense. "I didn't," Kakashi said, unruffled. He believed any reasonably sensible person would find the report incredible, yet he trusted what he'd seen. Hiruzen's expression turned serious. "Do you know what you're asking? A shinobi presumed dead for 9 years suddenly returns, and you present such an absurd claim?" He placed the pipe aside. He understood Kakashi. He trusted Kakashi's loyalty to the village. If it had been anyone else, Hiruzen would have ordered the Anbu to detain them for questioning. "But I believe you won't betray Konoha. Still, we have to be cautious. Bring him in tomorrow. I'll have Inoichi Yamanaka examine him. If there's anything strange in his mind, we'll find out." Normally, a suspected spy would be quietly investigated and, if necessary, subjected to mind-check techniques only as a last resort. In Obito's case, there was little to investigate. He'd simply been missing for 9 years. His explanation was far from helpful and bordered on contempt for Konoha's rules. Hiruzen trusted Kakashi's judgment that the man before them was Obito, and he also thought no sensible spy would behave this way. But procedures had to be followed. The Uchiha had recently held a meeting about a coup. The timing was too close for comfort. "Anything else?" Hiruzen asked. "No," Kakashi said. He bowed and left the office. Hiruzen took up his pipe again and stared into the smoke. There were only 8 days until the Uchiha's proposed action. He didn't know if Itachi could buy them enough time. Hiruzen truly didn't want the Uchiha clan to break with Konoha. If that happened, the other villages might seize the chance to strike, and another war could follow. The possibility weighed heavily on him. When Kakashi returned home, he told Obito what Hiruzen had requested. "The third Hokage didn't like your explanation. If Inoichi finds something in your head tomorrow, you might not have to worry about lodging anymore, he warned. It's just an examination. Let him examine me. Obito laughed, unbothered. Does the six-path sage really exist? Kakashi asked, curiosity getting the better of him. Of course he does, Obito replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. If he didn't, how do you think I came back? Obito hadn't lied about that. He had seen the Sage. But to Obito, Mu Yue was the one who mattered. Kakashi, for his part, didn't care much. Whether Obito had spent 9 years with a legendary sage or been rescued and held somewhere against his will was beside the point. He was just glad Obito was back. 825. Obito, I report that the Uchiha are planning a coup. As promised, Kakashi brought Obito to the Hokage's office. When the two of them entered, the first person they saw was Inoichi Yamanaka, standing in front of the desk. Third Hokage-sama, Inoichi-senpai, Kakashi greeted calmly. Hokage uncle, Inoichi-senpai, good morning. Obito smiled cheerfully as well, hardly the expression of someone who'd been called in for an interrogation. If anything, he looked like a guest invited for tea. Hiruzen Sarutobi nodded, then watched Obito more closely. He had had someone gather everything they could about the young Uchiha overnight and read it carefully. Aside from what might be called mediocre shinobi talent, Obito's record was impeccable. He gave every sign of someone raised by the will of fire. And mediocre talent was hardly the right word. Obito had awakened his Sharingan, and any Uchiha who had done that was already above the average Jonin. Kakashi should have told you about the inspection, right? Hiruzen asked with a kindly smile. If there was nothing major wrong, he could deal with this lightly. The Uchiha Hawks were strong right now. Having someone like Obito, who showed the will of fire, back in the village might help Itachi delay any rash moves and ease tensions. It's not that the village doesn't trust you, Hiruzen added. It's just that there are strange ninjutsu and secret techniques out there. Sometimes a person doesn't even know they've been made into a spy. Obito listened solemnly and then responded, I understand the village's concerns. I trust the village will do right by good people and not let the guilty go. Hiruzen seemed satisfied and gave the signal. Inoichi, begin. Inoichi stepped forward. Relax your mind. It helps me focus. He raised his right hand toward the top of Obito's head. Thanks for the reminder, Inoichi-senpai, Obito said, closing his eyes and settling into a relaxed expression. But when Inoichi's palm came within 2 centimeters of Obito's head, he frowned. Something like an invisible wall of air stopped his hand. No matter how hard he pushed, he couldn't make contact. Even when Inoichi increased his chakra flow to strengthen his palm, it made no difference. Kakashi and Hiruzen exchanged looks. The scene had a faintly comical air, as if the two were performing an invisible wall mime. Inoichi, what's wrong? Hiruzen asked. Third Hokage-sama, it's as if there's an invisible shield on him. I can't touch him. Inoichi withdrew his hand and reported the situation. Hiruzen was surprised. Before he could say anything, Obito spoke up. Oh, I almost forgot. I've cultivated the sage's body-protecting art. It makes most ninjutsu ineffective against me. Your touch may have been treated by it as harmful and blocked. Obito sounded mildly annoyed. He wasn't lying. He'd been practicing defensive techniques since returning from the ruins. But the reality was more complicated. Only Mu Yue could make the limitless technique operate fully automatically. Even Kakashi hadn't. Obito, having mastered Transparent World and developed his skills training with Kakashi, had learned a bit of Limitless to expand his defenses. He hadn't fully perfected it, but it was enough to plausibly explain the blockage. No one here would know the full truth about Limitless, and that gave him room to shape his explanation. The three in the office reacted with a mixture of surprise and doubt. Hiruzen addressed Kakashi. Kakashi, try touching him. Obito extended his right hand, signaling cooperation. Kakashi didn't hesitate and reached toward Obito. But just as their palms were about to meet, Kakashi's hand froze midair. Hiruzen and Inoichi could see that Kakashi wasn't holding back by choice. His body was still exerting force, but he could not break through. Try using a ninjutsu, said Obito. Kakashi hesitated, then condensed chakra. A flash of electricity danced over his hand. Don't worry about hurting me. Use everything you've got. The lightning flared, brighter than before, yet it could not touch Obito. Hiruzen's mind started racing. If such a defensive art could block something as forceful as multiple exploding tags, it would render most ninjutsu attacks useless in practice. This was more useful than even Earth Release, Earth Flow Wall, and it would put tremendous pressure on attackers. Can you cancel this body-protecting sage art? Otherwise the inspection will be difficult, Inoichi asked. Sage arts are techniques too. Of course they can be cancelled. I just forgot, Obito said with a chuckle, making a casual hand sign. Inoichi-senpai, please try again. This time Inoichi's palm met no resistance. He placed his hand on Obito's head, condensed chakra, closed his eyes, and probed Obito's memories. After a moment, he opened his eyes and looked at Hiruzen seriously. Third Hokage-sama, what Obito said is true. I detected nothing wrong. Hiruzen and Kakashi were stunned. Kakashi had been preparing arguments to defend Obito, and now it seemed Obito hadn't been lying after all. Hiruzen, though still uneasy, had to accept the result. He had already had Kakashi watch Obito the day before, and had dispatched 3 elite Anbu to follow him. The Anbu reported no suspicious behavior, and Inoichi had no prior connection to Obito that would make him biased. The idea of Inoichi and Obito betraying the village together was absurd. The Yamanaka clan's heads held crucial posts. If Inoichi were a spy, Konoha would already be doomed. The Uchiha had clashed with Konoha, but they weren't typically spies. When they acted, it was to seize power themselves. When all other explanations were eliminated, the unlikely truth was left. Obito had truly been fortunate. He had entered the Six-Path Sage's ruins, gained something, and only recently returned to Konoha. That's good. Hiruzen stroked his goatee and chuckled. The village needs promising young people like you, Obito. Though Hiruzen still felt something he couldn't name, he accepted Obito's identity. Obito scratched his head and made a request. My home is gone, and everyone in the clan thinks I died. Hokage uncle, could you announce my return in the newspaper? Hiruzen thought for a moment and agreed. He wouldn't print any grand proclamations, just a simple clarification that Obito had not died. The announcement went out quickly and caused a small stir in Konoha. People wondered who this Uchiha Obito was and how he had come back from presumed death. The Uchiha themselves discussed the announcement, but their complaints focused less on Obito than on old grievances. We Uchiha sacrificed so much for Konoha, yet none of our clan sits in the core power structure. That's persecution, one Jonin said angrily. They won't stay arrogant for long. In a few days, Konoha will belong to the Uchiha, another declared. Itachi watched the rising fanaticism in the clan with deep disappointment. If all you can think of is your family, how can you ever govern a village? He thought. Sasuke tugged at his sleeve. Brother, teach me shuriken jutsu. Itachi's expression softened at his younger brother. He agreed. He'd already decided to cooperate with Danzo's plan. His time with Sasuke was limited. Just then, Danzo Shimura burst into the Hokage office, his face set. Hiruzen, why didn't you tell me about this? What matter? Hiruzen asked, puzzled. Obito, Danzo said harshly. A ninja who vanished for 9 years, now you simply restore his status. What if he's already been brainwashed and sent here as a spy? If it were an ordinary shinobi, Danzo might have let it pass. Hiruzen had safeguards, and Anbu were efficient, but Obito was Uchiha, and he'd returned right as the Uchiha were showing signs of rebellion. Danzo had finally arranged to remove the Uchiha threat. He wouldn't allow any surprises to derail that plan. I had Inoichi Yamanaka examine his memories. He found nothing wrong, Hiruzen replied. That's not good enough, Danzo said. Hand him over to Root. I will investigate properly. Root was Danzo's answer to everything. If Obito went to Root, whether guilty or not, Danzo could key him useful, or disappear him. No, Hiruzen said firmly. He'd already released Obito publicly. Sending him back to Root would be like slapping his own judgment away. Besides, Hiruzen suspected Danzo's motives. If Obito ended up in Root, Kakashi would be devastated. Danzo argued violently, but Hiruzen would not relent. Hiruzen, you'll regret this. Danzo spat, then slammed the wooden door on his way out. Once outside, Danzo did the one thing he always did. He sent Root operatives to keep Obito under close watch. If Obito moved strangely, he was to be captured and brought in immediately. It broke protocol, but for Danzo, the clan extermination plan was worth the breach. He had already taken Shisui's eyes. Taking a suspect Uchiha into custody was a small matter. Both Root and Anbu monitored Obito now. The Anbu were some of the finest shinobi in the world, but they overestimated themselves in this case. Obito possessed something like Kenbun Shoku, an acute sense of awareness, and could detect those watching him. He smiled inwardly. Let them watch. It didn't bother him. On his second day after arriving in this world, a shadow clone of his had used the Flying Thunder God technique to travel, found Inoichi, and cast a genjutsu, something the Anbu hadn't detected. Obito had many ways to avoid being seen. It's time to visit the Uchiha compound, 5 days until Itachi and the others move, he told himself. It was his 4th day in Konoha. He'd been gathering information. This world's Konoha resembled the one he remembered in many ways, and there were no shinobi here who could really threaten him. Still, this was a parallel world. Without Mu Yue to fix things, he had to be cautious. He checked the time, rose, and walked to the Uchiha compound. Because of the newspaper story, the Uchiha recognized him quickly. "You're Obito from the paper, right?" one of them asked. "That's me," Obito replied. "You haven't decided where you'll live yet. Why come to the clan so soon?" the Uchiha asked, nervous. After all, they were planning a coup and were on edge. "I'm looking at where I'll live," Obito said with a chuckle, and the Jonin left him be. He wandered through the compound and soon came upon Itachi and Sasuke training in the forest. Sasuke had just thrown several shuriken, all hitting dead center. "Excellent. Little Sasuke's very impressive," Obito called, applauding. Sasuke beamed. Everyone liked praise. Itachi watched Obito with suspicion. Sasuke had been born after Obito's sacrifice, so why would Obito know him? "Do you know Sasuke?" Itachi asked. "Of course, I know Naruto too," Obito replied offhandedly. "That Naruto's always trying to pick fights with me. Annoying." Sasuke pouted at the mention of Naruto, and Itachi answered his brother's questioning look politely. "Perhaps I'll speak to him properly next time," Sasuke said. Obito didn't linger. As he walked past Itachi, he left a soft whisper that made the older Uchiha's mind twist with unease. Instead of relying on others, sometimes it's better to go with them. Itachi watched Obito's back intently. Sasuke called to his brother, but Itachi did not answer right away. Too many thoughts were running through his head. Could Obito know about Danzo's clan extermination plan? Impossible. Very few in Konoha knew about it. Could he be from Root? The conjectures multiplied without rest. On his way back to the Hokage building, Obito hummed and grinned. He wasn't sure what to make of Itachi, but he was determined to help save the clan, and perhaps have a bit of fun while doing it. "Watch me, Sage Obito. I'll smash every misfortune alone," he sang under his breath. Anbu surveillance had already alerted Hiruzen that Obito was returning, so Obito walked into the Hokage office without hindrance. He adopted an anxious, urgent expression and announced loudly the report he'd been saving. "Third Hokage, I want to report that the Uchiha clan intends to stage a coup. 826. Complete Susanoo. I report, the Uchiha clan intends to stage a coup." Hiruzen Sarutobi's thoughts were cut off by Obito's sudden, urgent shout. He had come to the Hokage office expecting an explanation for Obito's sudden reappearance in Konoha, not such a heavy declaration. Is the Uchiha clan really that careless, no longer even bothering to conceal it? Hiruzen kept his outward composure, but inside he was stunned. Anbu intelligence had hinted at unrest, but they had no proof that the Uchiha were openly preparing a coup. Obito, who had only recently returned to Konoha and supposedly hadn't had much contact with the clan, was claiming to know for certain. "Hokage-sama, believe me, I haven't misjudged. The Uchiha are plotting a coup. If we don't act quickly, Konoha could be torn apart from within. If the village fractures, other great nations might take advantage and invade the Land of Fire," Obito added gravely. Hiruzen listened, weighing the fear in the younger man's voice. "A few days ago, my Anbu already uncovered intelligence that a coup was coming," Hiruzen said eventually. "Then why haven't you suppressed the traitors?" Obito pressed. Hiruzen's shoulders slumped. He could not act as decisively as Senju Tobirama had in his day. Back then, Tobirama had crushed a coup before it began, but this situation was different. The hawkish faction inside the Uchiha had broad support. Arresting people now would only spark open war. Hiruzen did not want to see Konoha lose the Uchiha, but neither could he allow a civil war. "I'm trying to buy time," he admitted. "Letting someone from the Uchiha handle it would be best." "I'll do it," Obito volunteered. "For an Uchiha to stop an Uchiha coup, that's the right solution." Hiruzen glanced at him. He didn't entirely trust Obito, but he also had few options. Tell me what you want. Obito had sketched the plan in his head, but he kept most of it to himself. His recent return was still a fragile reputation, and it would look bad to appear too knowledgeable about inner clan affairs. Hiruzen rubbed his forehead, relieved he might finally have someone to rely on. Obito, however, suddenly filled the room with an intense, terrifying chakra that shattered the wooden floor beneath him with a crack. Hiruzen straightened and quietly gathered chakra. Alarmed, the Anbu guards outside the Hokage office sensed the surge and burst in, ready for an assassination. Go back, it's nothing, Hiruzen called, easing them out. Obito let the chakra dissipate and sighed. If this doesn't work, I'll personally deal with any rebels. He sounded low and resolute. But I won't accept unreasonable demands. Hiruzen considered, then agreed to Obito's staged terms. Obito gave a small, almost boyish grin at the concession. He knelt to pick up the broken wood fragments and said awkwardly, "These will be deducted from Kakashi's salary. I'll pay him back later. Goodbye, Hokage-sama." Hiruzen watched him go with mixed feelings. The force of Obito's chakra left him unsettled. He couldn't accept the ridiculous notion that some other village had spent 9 years brainwashing someone and simultaneously raising their power to Hokage level. Whoever could do that would have used such power to build a successor, not a spy. Obito's return, Hiruzen decided, was probably the best chance to resolve the Uchiha problem without bloodshed. Outside the Hokage building, Obito moved at speed toward the police force. 2 Root operatives saw where he was headed and intercepted him. Root hadn't expected him to visit the Uchiha, the Hokage, and now the police. He was deliberately stirring trouble. Obito barely looked at them. With a single whirlwind kick focused through his legs, he sent both Root ninja flying, toppling several trees before they crashed to a stop. He didn't check on them or finish them off. He simply continued toward the police force. The stunned Root agents wiped blood from their mouths. "Report to Danzo-sama," one said. "This guy's not right." At the police force, Obito asked for Uchiha Fugaku by name, and Uchiha on duty recognized him. "You're Obito? What do you want?" the shinobi demanded. Fugaku, captain of the police force, wasn't someone any outsider could see on a whim. "You can tell Fugaku," Obito replied, shrugging. Getting an ordinary clan member's help was pointless. He needed someone with authority. The guard bristled. "Don't think you can cause trouble here just because you're an Uchiha." Fugaku appeared then and, curious about the man who had been missing for 9 years, invited Obito into his office. "Did you come back because you had difficulties and want to rejoin the clan? The clan is going to stage a coup, right?" Obito cut him off. Fugaku's brow tightened, then eased into a frown. "A coup? Malicious rumor. Where did you hear that? I'll have them arrested." "You heard it from the 3rd Hokage," Obito answered lightly. "That's slander against the Hokage," Fugaku snapped, gaze hardening. "If the Hokage told you, then—" Obito poured himself a cup of tea from the teapot on the desk, completely at ease in Fugaku's office. Fugaku stared, trying to decide whether Obito was lying. Regardless of Obito's truthfulness, one fact stood out. Someone inside Konoha who had access to the truth had already told someone else. Hiruzen knew. If Hiruzen knew, why hadn't he acted? "The 3rd Hokage entrusted me and Itachi to resolve the Uchiha coup," Obito said, sipping his tea. "If Itachi was assigned, I would believe it," Fugaku said. "You, what are you capable of?" Obito only smiled. Fugaku's question came with a hint of contempt. Obito's expression shifted. In a blink, he moved to Fugaku's side and activated Kamui. He pulled Fugaku into the Kamui dimension. Inside that warped space, Fugaku reacted instinctively and fled, then froze when he saw the pattern in Obito's blood-red eyes. Not just the 3-tomo Sharingan, but the Mangekyo. He understood then why the clan documents whispered of godlike power. With those eyes, you understand the greatness of the Uchiha. Why help Konoha? Come back to the clan. With you, the coup would surely succeed. Fugaku's gaze hardened as he tried to recruit the prodigious returnee. Obito laughed softly. "Uncle Fugaku, you have quite a sense of humor. This power isn't the result of the Uchiha. Mu Yue guided me. It's not for helping the clan to overturn the village." Before Fugaku could respond, brilliant blue chakra erupted around Obito. The ground fractured and roared. From the dust and debris rose a towering samurai of blue light, an enormous Susanoo. It eclipsed 150 meters. Fugaku's kunai clattered from his hand as he stared in bitter, helpless awe. This was what the legends had meant. The Susanoo was divine power. The gap between them was a chasm. Not even the entire Uchiha clan united could hope to match Obito in such a form. Obito dispelled the perfect Susanoo and landed beside Fugaku with a calm smile. He understood that sometimes raw strength was the only way to make people listen. "If you stand with Konoha," he said, "then the Uchiha have no chance." Fugaku, pride wounded but practical, had to admit the truth. The coup was dead unless the clan could produce another Hashirama. Impossible. He cleared his voice. "What do you want me to do?" "Simple," Obito said. "Help me catch the Uchiha spies who are trying to stir up internal strife. Once we capture spies from enemy villages, your usefulness will be obvious. You'll be promoted, and the clan's position will improve." Obito's first stage plan was straightforward. He intended to label certain Uchiha as spies working for hostile villages, rather than as conspirators planning a coup. Being a spy was a serious crime, serious enough, but it was less incendiary than openly staging a rebellion. Obito wanted to change the course of the coming tragedy, but he wasn't prepared to shield every member of the Uchiha. Some would have to pay. Fugaku understood the implication. He had wanted the coup. He had argued that without a hard stand, the Uchiha would be slowly marginalized. If Shisui hadn't died, if Itachi had stood the clan, he started. "It wouldn't succeed," Obito interrupted bluntly. "I won't let you dreamers wreck things." Fugaku listened and finally nodded. He knew better than to think the Hokage's knowledge could lead to promotions, but the alternative, open war, would mean the clan's destruction. Better to play the hand Obito offered and try to survive. "Danzo-sama, Uchiha Obito has made a move." Two root operatives, bloodied and shaken, stumbled back into the base and reported to Danzo Shimura. They'd been hurt by Obito while trying to tail him. "He actually attacked an Anbu and still claims he isn't a spy," one of them panted. Danzo's face lit up. He had been hunting for any pretext to deal with Obito, and this incident seemed tailor-made. Root answered to him in practice, but on paper it was part of Anbu, so an attack on an Anbu operative was a serious offense. Still, Danzo knew the timing was delicate. The plan to eliminate the Uchiha was approaching, and Hiruzen would be hypersensitive. He wrestled with the impulse to send a capture team immediately. If Hiruzen discovered the extermination plot now, everything would be ruined. After a moment's thought, Danzo decided to take the issue straight to the Hokage's office. He didn't expect Hiruzen to execute Obito. Just a few days in jail would keep him quiet and out of the way until the scheduled operation. When the time came, Obito could be taken care of. Danzo planned to spare only two Uchiha, Itachi, who could be used for covert tasks, and Sasuke, who could keep Itachi in check. He was confident until Hiruzen listened and dismissed the report. Obito would never be a spy. "Your men violated protocol first and started it," the Hokage said, shaking his head. Hiruzen had pinned his hopes on Obito as a bridge with the Uchiha and would not be swayed by Danzo's insinuations. Angrily, Danzo returned to the root base and poured more resources into monitoring Obito. He told himself it didn't matter. 5 days remained until his extermination plan, and even if Obito caused trouble, 5 days wouldn't ruin it. By then, the Uchiha would already be buried. The next day, Danzo ordered a deeper probe into Obito's ties to Hiruzen. That same day, the Leaf newspaper ran another story about Obito, this time on the front page under the headline, "Hero Returns." The previous report had only confirmed that Obito was alive. Now the paper painted his whole story. The fourth Hokage's student crushed by a boulder while saving a friend, gifting his precious Sharingan, and then miraculously reappearing 9 years after being presumed dead. It was perfect legend fodder. In a single day, the name Obito echoed through every street of Konoha. Elder villagers recalled his childhood promise and nodded that he had indeed grown into something remarkable. Danzo's unease grew. Why was Hiruzen elevating an Uchiha at a time when the clan's coup loomed? He had little time to mull it over before worse news arrived. Root was under attack. A figure in a black hood and an orange mask had appeared inside the Root compound and spewed a jet of black fire, setting the base ablaze. Several Root operatives caught unawares were badly burned. "Secret technique, parasitic destructive insect," one shouted, sending a swarm. Water release, water dragon bullet technique, another answered. But the masked man just laughed and unleashed a greater inferno. Fire release, great fire annihilation. One glaring eye visible through the mask showed contempt as he expanded the flames and swallowed their attacks. Danzo's face drained. He recognized, or at least knew of, this masked figure from a past, uneasy cooperation. The man claimed to be Uchiha Madara. Danzo had planned to dispose of him after the Uchiha purge, but now the masked man had come to attack his own base. "I'll eradicate you here," Danzo growled, letting chakra gather around him. Root's elite and Konoha reinforcements would be enough. The masked man sneered. "Child's play. Let me show you true power." Susanoo. A searing blue light exploded around the masked figure. Materializing chakra rose into a towering form, a massive chakra giant, its shape stark and armored. In a blink it stood over the burning base, well over 70 meters, brandishing two great blue swords. With casual swings, the Susanoo's blades reduced Root's compound to rubble. "What power is this?" Root Shinobi cried, flew back like mere ants. Their attacks glanced off the Susanoo's defense. Danzo tried to flank. Wind release vacuum great sphere. He fired a slicing wind projectile aimed to strike the masked man within the Susanoo. A thick sword swipe intercepted and shattered the wind attack, forcing Danzo to dodge. Yasakani no Magatama. Energy Magatama erupted from the Susanoo and detonated across Danzo's position. He was shoved into the smoky debris, blood trickling from his mouth. Even as he rolled free, the gargantuan sword came down again. Danzo fled, furious and humiliated. He had long been the Fire Shadow's assistant and the leader of Root. When had he ever been so overmatched? He considered Kotoa Matsukami. If he could get close enough, he could bend the masked man's will. But Susanoo's immense form kept him at a distance. The masked man seemed to sense Danzo's intent and spewed enraged flames from the Susanoo. Water release attempts from Root evaporated instantly. Danzo could only retreat. Hiruzen arrived on the scene with an elite contingent, eyes grave as he beheld the blue giant. He was a scholar of ninjutsu and knew what stood before him. "I don't know what's happening. I was handling official business, and this masked man suddenly burst into my base and started wreaking havoc," Danzo said. "No one but an Uchiha can use Susanoo," Hiruzen said, gripping Enma, his monkey companion, as it transformed into the adamantine staff. He watched the masked figure intently. The masked man laughed coldly. "Weaklings, today I alone, Uchiha Madara, am the true Uchiha." "Ha! Madara died long ago at Hashirama's hands," Hiruzen retorted. "I only pretended to die and seized power from Hashirama," the masked man replied. "Let's see what you've learned, old man." He raised his great sword and slashed toward the Hokage. "Bastard! How dare you wreck Konoha! I'll make sure you never return." Obito suddenly leapt into the fray and hurled a blow at the masked man. The masked man swung a second greatsword. The blade was colossal. A single strike could wipe out dozens, and it arcs down at Obito. Kakashi, racing in, shouted, "Obito, get out of the way!" The sword slammed into the earth where Obito had stood, kicking up a thunderous column of dust. Hiruzen glared at Danzo. How could a spy be so recklessly brave? What sort of spy would fight like this? When the dust settled, Obito stood unharmed, holding the greatsword with one hand, keeping it from moving an inch further. Rudambu inhaled in shock. No ordinary human could hold a Susanoo's blade like that. Hiruzen and Kakashi, who had seen Limitless, knew better. It wasn't raw strength that protected Obito. Something about the weapon itself simply could not touch him. This protective sage art actually blocks such an attack? Hiruzen murmured. Obito centered his breath, drawing in natural energy and blending it with his chakra. A faint red glow suffused him. "Sage Obito," he said, "I have mastered sage arts." "Flame-breathing sage mode," he declared. Then, opening his mouth, he spat out a jet of brilliant blue flames that began to eat into the Susanoo blade. Sage art blue flame. The blue flames licked at the greatsword, melting large sections of it away. Obito followed with fist-sized fireballs that hammered into the Susanoo's chest, tearing open holes in the previously impenetrable defense. Even the masked man, who had remained unbothered until then, began to withdraw. Seeing Obito alone holding the field, Danzo's expression soured. Earlier, the masked man had driven Root Elite to the brink. If any of Danzo's subordinates had that kind of power, he would have been delighted. If a regular Konoha ninja had it, Danzo would investigate quietly, but an Uchiha with that strength? All he could think of was how to kill him. Obito's display left Danzo unsettled. The masked man coughed out a blinding cloud of hot ash to conceal his retreat. "Fire release, hiding in ash and dust technique," he cried. Hiruzen used a gust of wind release to clear the haze and scanned the area. Boo! The masked man was gone. Hiruzen ordered a full lockdown of Konoha and mobilized every available shinobi to hunt the attacker. Whoever the masked man was, he was dangerous. Some evidence suggested he had once controlled the Nine Tails. There simply weren't that many Uchiha capable of such power. If they truly had so many powerhouses, why would the Uchiha plot a coup? They could have marched straight into the Hokage office. For now, the masked man had vanished during that moment of obscuring ash. Hiruzen couldn't say how he escaped. After the battle, those who'd witnessed Obito's feats praised him. As expected of our Konoha hero, they said. Truly amazing. Obito waved the compliments off. I'm still far from my master. If only I'd arrived sooner. From that day on, Obito's reputation was more than just rumor. The villagers sang his praise, and many jonin acknowledged his strength. In a world where a shinobi's worth still came down to their power, Obito had earned the recognition he needed. You're saying Uchiha Obito, the one who sacrificed himself during the Third Shinobi World War, has returned to Konoha? And now there's someone calling himself Uchiha Madara, wearing a black robe and a mask, who raided Konoha at night, smashed into the root base, and even forced Hiruzen Sarutobi and Uchiha Obito to team up to drive him off? Even masked Obito, who had endured more than anyone outside the Uchiha could imagine, was caught off guard by Zetsu's intelligence report. He hadn't known that another Obito had shown up in Konoha and attacked Root. Zetsu chuckled. Isn't it delightful? The ninja world now has an extra Uchiha Obito and an extra Uchiha Madara. How dare someone impersonate me? Masked Obito's eyes darkened. Even if Uchiha Obito was a persona he'd abandoned, it wasn't a role anyone could slip into without consequences. Still, Zetsu was right to warn him not to underestimate the imposters. Uchiha Madara used a full Susanoo, and Obito displayed potent sage techniques, Zetsu added. From White Zetsu's outside perspective, the two sudden figures probably had some link, and their fight might have been staged in places, but the power they showed was undeniable. I know, masked Obito replied coolly. As a Mangekyo Sharingan wielder himself, he understood what a fully formed 70-meter Susanoo implied. A Mangekyo, an exceptionally strong eye power. Whoever that Madara was, he was formidable. Who could it be? The stranger called Uchiha Obito hadn't shown a Sharingan, so he might not be an Uchiha at all. But the one who used Susanoo had to be Uchiha. Few Uchiha had awakened the Mangekyo in recent years. Only Itachi and Shisui had, and Shisui was dead. Itachi didn't seem the type to generate such a massive Susanoo. The name that popped into masked Obito's head was Fugaku. If anyone in the clan besides Shisui or Itachi could have quietly awakened a Mangekyo, Fugaku was the likeliest candidate. He was the strongest of the remaining Uchiha. White Zetsu's reconnaissance was excellent, but even it couldn't watch every moment of every person. Fugaku could have used the eyes sparingly and slipped under the radar. But why would Fugaku do this? To stop Danzo Shimura from acting against the Uchiha. The possibility made sense. If Fugaku learned of Danzo's plan, he'd act to undermine it. Keep monitoring Uchiha Obito and Fugaku in Konoha, masked Obito ordered. With White Zetsu's capabilities, their weaknesses would show soon enough. Meanwhile, the real Obito let out a small smile. He imagined masked Obito reeling from the news and Danzo boiling with rage. The Uchiha Madara, who hit Root, had been his clone. The real masked Obito couldn't use Susanoo, and he certainly wouldn't be openly attacking Danzo now. My raid hurt Root deeply, Obito thought. Many Root-nin were injured or killed. Danzo's been badly wounded. He can't rely on Root to resolve the Uchiha problem now. That crippled Root changed the calculus. To eliminate the Uchiha militarily, Danzo would now have to negotiate with Hiruzen Sarutobi. Hiruzen had never wanted to exterminate the Uchiha outright, so Danzo's plan to solve the issue with force was effectively shattered. Obito still expected Danzo to push trouble in other ways. Danzo's nature made him dangerous. At first, Obito had considered simply killing Danzo during the attack. He had the means, but he decided against a quick execution. If Danzo died at the hands of Uchiha Madara defending the village, he might be lauded as a martyr who died for Konoha. Obito wanted Danzo to be exposed, hated, and despised before he died. He planned to gather proof of Danzo's crimes and make sure Danzo's end came under public scorn. Next on Obito's list was the Uchiha coup. If the clan still went ahead with a coup, Konoha would respond with overwhelming force. The clan would be badly hurt, though not necessarily reduced to the single survivor fate of the original timeline. Obito's real priority was to remove the idea of a coup altogether. That was the purpose behind the masked clone attack, to separate masked Obito from the Uchiha narrative. The Ninetales attack had indeed been carried out by an Uchiha, but it was the action of a rogue, not the whole clan. If the village continued to treat the Uchiha as a uniform threat, nothing would stop future cycles of violence. Obito wanted to change that perception, to isolate the rogue act from the clan and reintegrate the Uchiha into Konoha. A sudden rush of chakra told him someone was approaching. Obito straightened, patting his back. Finally, he stepped forward. "It's you," Itachi said immediately, eyes sharp and cautious. He'd received a strange note earlier. "If you don't want Konoha to erupt into war, come to the depths of the south border forest." And when he tried to question the messenger, he found the man under a genjutsu. So Itachi had come alone. "Why couldn't it be me?" Obito smiled. "Who are you really? And what do you mean by Konoha erupting into war?" Itachi demanded. He'd long suspected Obito of some secret. Obito already seemed to know about the clan extermination plan. "I'm Uchiha Obito," Obito said simply. "As for war, now that Root's strength has been crippled, do you think Danzo's extermination plan can still succeed?" Itachi went silent. Without Root, Danzo couldn't carry out the operation. If the clan were not destroyed before a coup tried to move, Konoha might face civil conflict. "If you follow my lead, there won't be a civil war, nor will there be a need to exterminate the clan," Obito continued. "Give me a reason to trust you," Itachi replied. Obito was too suspicious to accept on faith. Itachi had done well not to report him so far, but he would not obey based on a single sentence. "You don't have a choice." Obito's chakra flared. In a blink, he was beside Itachi, coolly patting his shoulder. Itachi's pupils widened as his three Tomoe Sharingan triggered instinctively. "So fast," he breathed. Even his Sharingan couldn't follow Obito's motion. Obito added, "Even if Danzo had the forces, I'd stop him." "You want to support the Uchiha coup?" Itachi asked, gathering chakra. "No, I won't back a coup, and I won't let civil war happen. I want to mediate, make the clan give up the coup, and help them truly reintegrate into Konoha," Obito said. "That's impossible," Itachi muttered reflexively. "How can you be so sure?" Obito read him and smirked. "If you're confident in yourself, why don't we fight and test it?" Itachi considered for half a minute. Obito's aura was as mysterious as any rumor of knowing his abilities would be valuable. He agreed. "Fire release, great fireball technique." Itachi formed the signs and sent a huge orange-red ball of flame toward Obito. It was efficient for an opening probe, not very chakra-heavy, but powerful. Obito centered his breathing, slipping into a heightened state. He entered Sage mode of his breathing technique while activating the breathing chakra mode. A red glow suffused his body. "Flame-breathing chakra mode," he murmured, then brought his hands together. "Sage art, great fireball technique." A massive blaze erupted, a fireball more than 10 meters high. Itachi's attack was swallowed like an egg under a soccer ball. He had to explode chakra and dodge. "Is this sage art? So strong," he said through a tightening expression. Obito's casually cast great fireball had overwhelmed Itachi's best fire jutsu. Seizing the moment, Obito surged forward. The boost from Sage mode plus the breathing chakra mode made him blistering fast. Itachi's three Tomoe Sharingan strained to follow. He activated his Mangekyo Sharingan to compensate, but even the Mangekyo couldn't turn the tide. A few exchanges later, Obito found an opening and landed a punch that sent Itachi flying into a tree. "My body can't keep up with my eyes," Itachi thought, grim-faced. Taijutsu had never been his strongest suit. Compared to Obito, even his excellent taijutsu seemed lacking. He tried genjutsu, but it had no effect. "Can I only rely on the Mangekyo?" Itachi hesitated. Obito's power was overwhelming, but Itachi trusted his Mangekyo techniques, Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, to swing things back. Still, those abilities had been his secret trump cards. "Don't hesitate," Obito said casually. Even if you use Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu together, you won't hurt me. Itachi froze. How could Obito know about the Manjikyo abilities he had never revealed? Because I'm Sage Obito, Obito declared. Faced with that declaration and the overwhelming display of jutsu, taijutsu, and resistance to genjutsu, Itachi had no choice but to concede. If Obito could shrug off Manjekyo techniques and match him in every other aspect, then fighting on would be futile. After a long silence, Itachi agreed to help. Obito had not come from root. His intent wasn't to inflame Konoha with war. He was simply too strong to be a mere brainwashed spy, and if his goal was to weaken Konoha, he didn't need an Uchiha uprising. In the end, Itachi concluded, Obito might very well be a true Konoha loyalist who wanted only to resolve the Uchiha problem without bloodshed. With Itachi's reluctant cooperation secured, Obito took the first steady step toward his larger plan, to stop Danzo's machinations, prevent a coup, and keep the Uchiha from being torn apart by war. 829. Cancellation of the coup. With only 2 days left until the Uchiha clan's planned coup, Uchiha Fugaku called an emergency clan meeting with no prior notice. Every Uchiha shinobi was informed and hurried to the Nanga shrine. What is Fugaku doing? Calling a clan meeting without even consulting us? Uchiha Shengqing grumbled, clearly displeased. With the coup so close, why make such a sudden move? Isn't he afraid the Anbu will catch wind of something? Caution's good, but don't be so paranoid. Konoha was just attacked by that masked man in the black cloak. They don't have the manpower to monitor us closely. Besides, Fugaku wouldn't call an emergency meeting unless it was important, Uchiha Yashiro said. That's exactly why we should be more careful. This is our best chance for a coup, and Fugaku hasn't even shown up yet. Who knows what he's up to? Shengqing replied, his suspicion sharpening. As time passed, seats at the Nanga shrine filled, but Fugaku did not appear. The assembled Uchiha began whispering among themselves. Fugaku had never been late before. This was very unusual. Footsteps approached. All eyes turned to the entrance, and instead of Fugaku, a young black-haired man walked in. Who is that? Is he even from our clan? One Uchiha whispered. You haven't kept up? He's Obito. He's been getting famous lately. A few days ago, he and the third Hokage repelled that masked man. A long-haired Uchiha explained. A Konoha hero in our clan. The room murmured with surprise. Word of Obito's deeds had spread fast. Obito heard the conversation and nodded slightly, pleased that his reputation had already reached the clan. Fugaku had invited him, Shengqing realized, which only deepened his unease. Obito's strength was unquestionable, but he'd been absent for so long. Who knew what he'd do once he learned of the coup? Not long after Obito entered, Fugaku and Itachi came in behind him. As Itachi stepped forward, a Uchiha leapt to his feet and shouted, Itachi, you dare show your face here! Cold looks settled on him. At the previous clan meeting, Itachi had openly opposed the coup and had been branded a traitor by many. Uchiha Izumi clasped her hands and looked at him with concern. Itachi ignored the others and offered her a small, reassuring shake of the head. He wasn't here to take center stage, only to help shape the atmosphere. We're all clansmen. There's no need for this, Obito said with a light laugh, taking the seat Fugaku usually used and facing the assembly. Obito, get up. That's Fugaku's seat, Uchiha Yashiro whispered. No need. Let him sit, Fugaku said, sitting down beside Obito. Itachi took the other side, so the three of them faced the gathered Uchiha. Several elders exchanged uncertain glances. What was Fugaku planning? Fugaku called an emergency meeting. Do you have an announcement? Yashiro finally asked. Yes. Fugaku stood, calm and measured. The coup planned for 2 days from now is cancelled. His voice wasn't loud, but the words were like a depth charge that detonated through the Nanga shrine. Cancelled? Are you postponing again? Why cancel the coup all of a sudden? Fugaku, are you betraying the clan? The Uchiha demanded answers. Many had accepted the coup after long debate. For it to be dismissed so casually was intolerable. Shengqing grinned inwardly. Self-destruction, indeed. Military action had become the correct path in the clan, and even he, leader of the Hawk faction, would be forced to follow it or lose power. One hot-headed Uchiha, overcome with emotion, instinctively activated his Sharingan. Blood-red eyes flared across the shrine, and at once others followed. Dozens of Sharingan stared at Fugaku, as if daring him to explain. Even the seasoned Fugaku felt the pressure. Being watched by so many Sharingan would give anyone pause. Obito, however, remained relaxed. "We're all clansmen. Put your Sharingan away and speak properly," he said, as if calming children. "It's not your place to give orders," a young Uchiha with a 3-Tomoe Sharingan snapped, rising to his feet. Boom. Obito's chakra erupted like a shockwave. The shrine trembled. Spiderweb cracks spread through the floor beneath him. Faces went pale at the strength of that aura. That chakra. Shengqing's expression changed. Even those who knew chakra wasn't everything recognized Obito's power as extraordinary. "Want to try and give orders?" Obito asked coolly, looking at the standing Uchiha. The man met Obito's gaze and froze. Obito's eternal Mangekyo, that deep, ocean-like presence, silenced his defiance. He sank back down. "I won't hide it," Obito said. "Canceling the coup was my idea. I convinced Uncle Fugaku." The hall erupted in accusations. "If you're so strong, help the clan. Once we succeed, the Uchiha will be glorious again," a Jonin shouted, refusing to accept the explanation. "Are you even worthy of your Sharingan?" another taunted. Voices filled the shrine. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. Itachi clenched his fists with a sinking heart. These people cared only for the clan's glory. What right had they to criticize Obito? Obito had been a Konoha war hero. His intent was to save the Uchiha from annihilation, not to abandon them. The memory of Shisui's death rose hot in Itachi's mind. Some accused Obito of killing Shisui, others blamed Shisui's mental fragility. It had made Itachi furious. Shisui had sacrificed so much for the clan, and these fools dared to complain? What a hopeless clan, Itachi thought, lowering his gaze. He began to consider a dark solution. If these idiots would drag Konoha into ruin, better to remove them. Kill the dissidents, preserve the clan's reputation. Itachi even imagined a grim future. Rogue Uchiha Itachi exterminates his clan and is then slain by Konoha hero Obito. The image felt perversely fitting. Obito didn't lose his composure under the accusations. He was someone who intended to become Hokage. If he panicked now, his ambition would be meaningless. What's the point of becoming Hokage by a coup? I want to earn it fair and square, he said, rising with a confident smile. He explained his thinking plainly. Strength could coerce, but it would leave a trail of blood and weaken the clan. He wanted a peaceful resolution, and the key was the position of Hokage. The Uchiha weren't rebelling only because they were proud. They felt the current Konoha leadership was undeserving and that the clan was oppressed. Their goal was the Hokage's seat. Obito couldn't seize it by force without devastating consequences, but he could offer the clan hope of an Uchiha Hokage. My teacher is the fourth Hokage, and my strength is no less than the third's. I'm a Konoha hero. Why would I need a coup to become Hokage? He asked. Who can stand against me? He continued, naming potential rivals. The Sannin, Jiraiya is lecherous and lacks ambition. Orochimaru is already a rogue and has forfeited his place. Tsunade is capable, but addicted to gambling and unreliable. His words were arrogant, but they forced the clan to think. Could any of the Sannin truly block him? Even if you have the strength and reputation, Konoha's higher-ups will exclude you, Shengqing countered. Uncle Fugaku made great contributions in the Third Shinobi World War. Everyone on the battlefield knew Fugaku the Fierce Eye, yet he wasn't even allowed to be nominated. The Uchiha must stage a coup to guarantee our rights. Coup! Coup! Reclaim our rights! The shrine swelled again with cries for action. Shengqing stared at Obito, his resolve hardening. Obito's rhetoric only strengthened the Hawk faction's belief that a coup was necessary. Fugaku stood. I didn't fail to be nominated because of suppression. My abilities were lacking. Minato Namikaze and Orochimaru outshone me in contribution and strength, he said quietly. He had his battlefield reputation, but could he compare to the Yellow Flash? Fugaku's honesty silenced the crowd. Many had assumed he'd been deliberately shut out. Unmoved, Obito added, if I wasn't chosen as a candidate before, that doesn't mean I can't be now. I'm the Anbu commander. At 2, NT1. Do you think I'm being suppressed? Anbu commander? The assembled Uchiha were stunned. That position was second only to the Hokage in hidden roles. Young, prestigious, and powerful. Arrest them. Obito snapped his fingers, and Anbu flooded into the shrine. Before the Hawk faction could react, Shengqing and several of his most vocal supporters were restrained by Anbu operatives. What are you doing? Others cried, trying to free their clansmen. Fugaku's Sharingan opened, and his deep voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone, sit down." Most Uchiha halted. They would not fight their own clan leader. A few diehards resisted but were subdued by Anbu. The rest stared at Obito with a mix of anger and incredulity. They obeyed Fugaku, not because they accepted the outcome, but because they believed Fugaku would not harm them. "Accepting money from the Hidden Cloud village to incite our clan into a coup," Obito declared coldly, throwing several sealed scrolls before Shengqing. "Elder Shengqing, did you truly want to restore the Uchiha, or did you want to profit from our anger?" Shengqing's face drained of color. He opened his mouth to protest, then stopped when he saw the scrolls. His expression told the truth. He had been compromised. The other Uchiha watched in stunned silence. Shengqing had many supporters. Had he been framed, they would have leapt to his defense. But his ashen face and silence said otherwise. Itachi watched with a thoughtful, unreadable look. "Elder Shengqing, do you have anything to say?" Obito asked. All the Uchiha in the hall turned to look at Uchiha Shengqing. Many of them expected him to deny the accusation. It was hard to believe such a respected elder could betray both the Uchiha and Konoha. Uchiha Shengqing glanced at the sealed scroll, closed his eyes and said nothing, neither denying nor admitting the charge. "Elder Shengqing, speak up! How could you do this?" one Uchiha demanded, incredulous. "You deserve to die 1,000 deaths," another shouted angrily. The Uchiha's hatred had never been truly against Konoha as a whole, but against the leadership that singled them out. Even those among them who favored a coup despised traitors within their own ranks. Shengqing's actions were seen as a betrayal not just of Konoha, but of the Uchiha clan itself. Tempers flared. Some, blinded by fury, tried to rush forward, but the Anbu held them back. "Take them away," Obito ordered, gesturing to the Anbu to escort the hotheads, led by Uchiha Shengqing, back to Anbu headquarters. For a moment the atmosphere in Nanga Shrine turned oddly still. The Uchiha present looked lost, uncertain what to do next. A coup? It was impossible now. The clan head was leading the opposition, and the Anbu knew about the plot. Moreover, how could the dignified Uchiha fall in with a scheme hatched by the Hidden Cloud? If not a coup, then what could prevent their persecution, restore the clan's standing, and make an Uchiha Hokage a real possibility? They all looked at the young black-haired man standing before them. 21, Anbu commander, a war hero for Konoha, and the 4th Hokage's disciple. With such credentials, the Hokage seat no longer seemed unreachable. Obito met their stares without guilt and spoke earnestly. "I understand everyone's desire to revive the clan, but you cannot act rashly. Rashness makes us easy to manipulate," he said. "Even if a coup succeeds, what would the Uchiha inherit? A Konoha torn by war, constant conflict. Didn't our ancestors cooperate with the Senju to build Konoha for the sake of peace? To launch a coup, to return us to war, would be to burn away the work of those ancestors." His words made the Uchiha present fall into thought. They were not mere battle addicts who lived only for fighting. If they were, Uchiha Madara would not have found himself alone when he left. They had come to appreciate the peace Konoha offered. Few wanted to return to the endless wars of old. The push toward a coup had grown because of genuine persecution. Danzo Shimura's open policies against them and the resulting rise of the hawkish faction had driven tensions to a dangerous peak. "If only you'd come back sooner," Obito, a middle-aged Uchiha Jonin, sighed. Another reason they had leaned toward a coup was their belief that an Uchiha Hokage was impossible, that the chance for an Uchiha to lead Konoha had vanished. "The past is the past. Aren't I here now?" Obito replied with a faint smile. "Does anyone still support the original coup plan?" he asked, looking around. The shrine fell silent. With the hawkish leader discredited and a viable Hokage candidate emerging from their own ranks, even the radicals tilted toward Obito's plan. A coup was no longer the only option. The Uchiha could pursue rightful influence within Konoha. Itachi watched Obito with admiration. Obito had not revealed every detail of his plan. Itachi and the others only knew what they needed to. But whatever he had done, he had solved a deadlock Itachi had thought unsolvable. Itachi didn't even know when Obito had become Anbu commander. He'd never seen Obito in the Anbu before. Still, Obito had impressed him. If it's him, he might truly be able to become Hokage, Itachi thought. In his heart, Obito already claimed the title of 5th Hokage. Then dismissed. Obito announced. The words should have come from Uchiha Fugaku, the clan head, but no one objected. Obito had become the clan's hope for the Hokage, and the Uchiha rose and left. After the crowd dispersed, Obito turned to Uchiha Fugaku. Uncle Fugaku, please put more effort into guiding the clan and controlling its direction. He had only stopped the immediate coup. The deeper conflict between the Uchiha and Konoha remained. The tension needed continued attention. I will, Fugaku agreed readily. At first, he had been compelled by Obito's strength, but now he truly believed in him. Obito offered a path that did not gamble the clan's fate, a real hope. Itachi didn't go home with Fugaku. He followed Obito instead. Thank you. You saved the Uchiha, Itachi said solemnly. He didn't idealize his clansmen, but he didn't want them slaughtered either, not when Sasuke could be left alone. Save the Uchiha? Not yet, Obito shook his head. He had only stopped the coup. Danzo still needed to be dealt with, and Konoha's hostile environment had to change before the clan could be considered truly safe. Is there anything else I can do? Itachi offered. Don't worry. I'll let you know when I need you, Obito said, patting Itachi's shoulder. For now, learn from me. Don't be self-centered. Don't go to extremes. Obito's success today owed as much to the groundwork he'd prepared as to having Fugaku and Itachi at his back. Fugaku's prestige as clan head and Itachi's reputation made Obito's authority inescapable. When Itachi stood behind him, how could the rest not respect Obito's leadership? Itachi, for his part, accepted Obito as a new role model. After they parted, Obito returned to Kakashi's house and collapsed into a chair. We finally got through the most critical period, he sighed. The past days had been exhausting. Preventing the annihilation of the Uchiha and planning for their future had been more taxing than fighting a war in a parallel world. In that other life, the Fourth Great Shinobi War meant beating bosses. This required thinking through politics and people's lives. Kakashi, you'd be proud, having personally stopped such a big thing, Kakashi said when he came in. He hadn't known about the coup until Obito put him on the capture squad, but he'd understood how close Konoha had come to civil war. Proud, yes, but tired, Obito admitted, taking a long breath. There was accomplishment, but also fatigue. Kakashi, you're so thoughtless. Do you know I said a lot? Didn't you think I'd be thirsty? Go pour me a glass of water. Do you expect the cup to make water appear? Obito sat up, suddenly parched. Kakashi rolled his eyes. As Anbu commander, my authority is limitless, Obito declared self-righteously. Kakashi muttered, I really don't know what the third Hokage was thinking, as he poured water and set the glass in front of Obito. Obito drank it down in one go, smiling. This parallel world amused him. In his original life, he could never boss Kakashi like this. Don't call me unless it's important. I'm going back to training, Kakashi said as he refilled Obito's glass and headed for the yard. Still training at this hour? Obito called. Kakashi paused only a moment, thinking of how Obito once stood against Susanoo alone. Of course, I'm an elite Anbu, he said, and disappeared into the night. Obito's strength and his way of handling things put Kakashi in a strange position, proud of his friend, but unable to accept being so far behind. That conflicted feeling gnawed at Kakashi. Hidden in the shadows, a different figure watched with displeasure. Masked Obito's disguise had kept him from uncovering anything important through White Zetsu spies, so he had come to Konoha himself. What he saw at Kakashi's house made him tense. The imposter was using Obito's face and name, enjoying Kakashi's hospitality, and the real Kakashi treated him like an old friend. Masked Obito felt the eye he had given Kakashi was wasted. What use was a Sharingan if it could not tell the real from the fake? I want to see who you really are, Masked Obito murmured, concealing his presence and using Kamui to pass through the wall, reaching to grab Obito. Anyone pulled into the Kamui dimension would be at his mercy. Even doing nothing, an enemy-dragged T here would eventually starve. Are you a sewer rat, relying on sneak attacks and cheap tricks? Obito said, turning his head to taunt him. Masked Obito believed he was well hidden, but Obito had detected him long ago with his Kenbunshoku, his observational sense. He just hadn't revealed it. Heh, what right do you have to say that when you won't even show your face? Masked Obito retorted calmly. You don't dare to show your face, huh? Obito smiled, amused. In this world, he had told many lies and deceived many people, but when he acted as Uchiha Obito, he did not hide his appearance. Masked Obito, on the other hand, never removed his mask. "If you have the guts, follow me," Obito said, bursting through the window into the yard. He didn't want to fight inside Kakashi's house. He didn't want anything wrecked. "Bluff," Masked Obito answered and pursued. He had scoped the area. The fake Uchiha Madara was nowhere nearby. Only the fake Obito remained here, and with Kamui, he felt invincible. Even if this Obito were stronger, he could always pull back. Obito did not run far. He stopped in a small nearby stand of trees. Masked Obito concentrated chakra in his Mangekyo Sharingan. Space twisted, and a swarm of black rods shot out. "Child's play," Obito said, standing with his arms crossed and letting the rods stab toward him. Under the influence of Limitless, each rod halted 3 centimeters from his body and fluttered uselessly to the ground. "That's so-called body-protecting sage art, huh?" Masked Obito was not surprised. Konoha's files recorded this ability. He didn't use ninjutsu again. Instead, he reached out, intending to seize Obito directly. According to his intelligence, this defense could even block Susanoo, the ultimate guard. Masked Obito didn't flinch. No matter how strong the defense, could it withstand Kamui? Obito's response was to form a single hand and condense chakra into a basketball-sized orb. "Rasengan," he called. Masked Obito's expression flickered with recognition. He remembered the Rasengan vividly. The last time Minato Namikaze had combined Flying Thunder God with Rasengan, it almost killed him. Fortunately for Masked Obito, half his body was white Zetsu, and that gave him uncanny resilience. "It doesn't matter," he said, recovering his composure. Not every Rasengan could hit him. Minato could, because he'd found, through speed and technique, a way to exploit Kamui's weakness. Still, this gleaming blue sphere hurtled straight at him. Masked Obito met it without fear. "You are Obito. Who am I?" Masked Obito didn't dodge. He charged. The gap between them shrank in an instant. Just as they closed to a meter apart, Obito suddenly flicked a kunai with his left hand, aiming for the masked man's head. The kunai passed through as if through smoke. Masked Obito only sneered and kept coming. "If that's all you've got, the fight's over." Reaching within arm's length, Masked Obito canceled Kamui to make his body solid. "Got you," he thought. But Obito vanished without warning, and a brutal pain exploded across Masked Obito's back. Obito had flashed behind him and smashed a Rasengan into him. The compressed chakra detonated, crippling Masked Obito and leaving a smoking crater in the ground. "Impossible! Flying Thunder God technique!" Masked Obito spat through gritted teeth, staggering away to buy distance. A Rasengan was one thing, an A-rank ninjutsu requiring no hand seals. But the Flying Thunder God technique was a space-time art taught only by Tobirama Senju and Minato Namikaze. Masked Obito briefly wondered if the man before him might really be Tobirama or some other hidden threat. "Who are you, really? You even have that jutsu," Obito chuckled. "I've told you, I'm Obito." Masked Obito's expression went cold. "Your disguise might fool fools, but not me." "Disguise? If I'm not Obito, then are you?" The masked man's eyes flashed. He was certain the man before him already knew the truth. "I'll be watching you from the shadows. Don't think you've won." He activated Kamui and vanished into the space he controlled. Once inside the Kamui dimension, Masked Obito spat blood and steadied himself. The Rasengan had done serious damage. Half his body felt useless. He had hidden the injury to avoid giving the other man any advantage, but the pain was real. "Let Zetsu gather more information before I return," he decided, and forced himself to breathe. Before Masked Obito could move, Obito phased into the Kamui dimension, then used the Flying Thunder God technique to appear in front of him and hit him with another Rasengan. Masked Obito screamed as blood sprayed. His right arm was torn off, and crimson welled from several wounds. "How?" Masked Obito lay in a pool of blood, bewildered. He couldn't understand how the Flying Thunder God technique had followed him into his own dimension. It shouldn't be possible. And why did this man possess the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan? 1,000 questions crowded his mind. Obito peered down at him with casual indifference. Masked Obito, bleeding out and broken, was insignificant now. The Kamui dimension's unique connectivity made finding him easy enough, and Obito had been busy with other matters until Masked Obito walked right into his hands. "So? Do I win now?" Masked Obito glared up. Even on the brink of death, he wanted answers. With Kamui and the power of the Uchiha, he should have been free to move and dominate the shinobi world, yet he had been crushed by this fake Obito. He had to know if this man was somehow tied to some terrifying secret. No matter how many times I tell you, I'm Uchiha Obito. You're humiliating me with that line, masked Obito spat back. You obviously know who I am. If you're Obito, then who am I? Obito considered him for a beat, then answered as if deciding on a nickname. You can call yourself stupidly misguided Obito. The masked man seethed. He felt insulted beyond measure. Obito produced several black rods of chakra, plucked one, and drove it into masked Obito's left arm. He bit down on a cry and tried to remain silent, but one by one, Obito set rods into vital points on his body. When the last rod pierced his chest and struck his heart, masked Obito could not hold back a wail. His eyes burned with hatred that could have killed. It doesn't feel good to have your heart pierced, does it? Obito asked flatly as he fed yang-released chakra into the rods to keep him from dying outright. What were you thinking when you attacked your teacher and his wife? What kind of mind decides that's justice? Masked Obito's screams Arnett Obito no pity. He thought of what the masked man had done to Naruto's family and felt only disgust. My teacher? A teacher who couldn't recognize his own student? A teacher who prides himself on speed but is always late when it counts. Masked Obito sneered. Who would suspect the sacrificed pupil would come to Konoha dressed like this? Are you serious? Obito snapped. And what about Kushina? Masked Obito only said, coldly, it was a necessary sacrifice for a better world. Once the plan succeeds, everything returns. Hearing those words, Obito tightened. He formed seals, connecting the black rods with chakra to create a sealing formation. Then he ripped them from masked Obito's body. Pain contorted the man's face again. Killing you would be too easy. You'll suffer for every evil you committed. With that, Obito sealed masked Obito's chakra. The pattern bound the man's energy so thoroughly that, short of the Six Paths sage himself rising, no one in the ninja world could break it. Then Obito left, his business done. Masked Obito watched the figure disappear, fury and confusion warring across his face. He had abandoned the idea that Tobirama could be the man. Tobirama could not have been this powerful. If Tobirama had been so strong, how would the Uchiha ever have survived the Senju's assaults back then? The next day, using Fugaku Uchiha's capture of a spy as an excuse, Hiruzen Sarutobi gave Fugaku a ceremonious political position in Konoha, a token of honor with little real power. The Uchiha were thrilled. It felt like the higher-ups in the village weren't quite as hostile to them as they'd feared. At the same time, Obito's public image continued to improve. Stories of his heroism spread, and his prospects for the Hokage seat grew more solid. Calls for a violent coup to seize the position dwindled, and the Uchiha Hawks lost momentum fast. Next, I'll deal with that old geezer Danzo. After that, things should be calm for a while. Obito walked through the Uchiha compound, planning. Danzo Shimura had to go. He always put his own interests first and had no real loyalty to Hiruzen. If Danzo remained, the Uchiha might never find peace. Even aside from clan politics, Danzo's removal would be a service to the village. Amidst the chorus of Lord Obito, he left the compound and headed toward the village center. Using Kenbunshoku Haki, he quickly spotted Uzumaki Naruto in the small park where he'd first transmigrated. Naruto sat with a few other children, chatting. I want to be a hero like Lord Obito, someone who saves comrades in the village, one kid gushed. Yeah, Lord Obito's amazing. He could be Hokage, another added. What Lord Obito? The Hokage will be mine, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto boasted, puffing out his chest. You don't even know Lord Obito. You don't know how incredible he is, a brown-haired boy complained. He's always playing pranks, the boy's friend agreed. Lord Obito survived being surrounded by Iwagakure ninja alone, and he teamed up with the third Hokage to defeat the attackers. They say he already has the same power as the third, the brown-haired boy said proudly. That's impressive, but I'll be even more amazing, Naruto insisted. They argued on until the brown-haired boy glanced up and saw Obito approaching. He blinked, then recognized him from a newspaper photo and practically squealed. Lord Obito, could I have your autograph? Lord Obito, me too. Idiot big brother. Naruto turned and grinned, surprised. It was the idiot big brother who'd once taken him out to eat and run. The brown-haired boy scolded Naruto for teasing, but Obito only laughed and tousled Naruto's hair. Haha, an autograph? Of course. He signed the little notebooks eagerly handed to him. Naruto, let's go to Ichiraku Ramen later. I'll treat you. Really? Can we go somewhere else? Naruto scratched his head. He didn't want to keep running away from Tochi. What are you thinking? Last time was an accident. Obito tapped his forehead with a two-finger salute. He could borrow the money fro, Kakashi or Yamato if needed. The boys gaped as Obito left in a dashing, confident stride. Uzumaki Naruto, what's your relationship with Lord Obito? The brown-haired boy asked, jealous. Are you related? His friend guessed. No, we're friends, Naruto said proudly. Friends? The boys were stunned. If it had been earlier, they'd have thought Naruto was bragging. Now, looking at him and at Obito, they believed him. Uzumaki Naruto, you're amazing, they said in awe. Of course, Naruto said, puffing his chest out.